Welcome to GRE Snacks, snackable episodes about the GRE, GMAT, and graduate school admissions. I'm Tyler, the founder of Achievable, and we have an affordable GRE course that includes everything you need to ace your GRE exam. A full textbook, videos on key topics, tons of GRE questions backed by our memory enhancing algorithm, a built in study planner and essay grader, and full length practice exams. Give it a try for free by going to achievable.me. Now, let's get started. Today we've got Matt Roy with us, and Matt, I'd love if you can introduce yourself.
Yeah. Hello, everyone. My name is Matt Roy. As Tyler said, I'm the course author for the GRE course with Achievable, and I have been tutoring the GRE for more than 5 years now. I started with Kaplan before COVID, and then I started tutoring independently on Leland and Wysant. And I've tutored over 1,000 hours at this point.
Fantastic. Yeah, so that makes you a great person to answer this question. So today we're going to be talking about how to maximize your GRE score and how much you increase that score with limited study time.
Yes.
So how would you normally start this conversation with maybe one of your tutoring clients or
Yeah.
something like that?
Oh, the first thing, okay, if they have a test next week, or 2 weeks from now. And I have had students that come to me and they say, "I've got a test and I just want like a crash course thing real quick right before I take the test." I oftentimes ask them like, "When is your deadline? Let's push it back." Because that is not
Yeah.
that is there's no reason to do that to yourself. However, if it's really if they have to, if they have to take it in, let's
Yeah.
say, 2 weeks or 10 days, basically like here's the things that I do with them. But in this podcast as well, it's going to be more about in general what you would do, even if you didn't have a tutor. Okay, so the first thing I would do is research the program I'm applying into and see which sections are important for your application. So there are definitely some programs that care only about quant, and you should be focusing a lot of your time just because time is now scarce. You should focus a lot of it on quant. So that's the first point is like recognize first off where your weakness is, and we'll talk about that in a second. But secondly, where you should be spending your time. Okay.
Yeah, I want to dig into that a little bit because, I would imagine that there are some people that basically I feel like there's probably different ways to increase your score, like broadly speaking, fixing obvious mistakes, like learning how to do certain problem types, and then learning how to do advanced stuff. Like those are very broad categories, but that's kind of how I'm thinking about it. And so I would imagine that fixing obvious mistakes is going to get you the most return on your time investment, right? And then learning some problem types might also give you a good return on your time investment depending on what problem types you're struggling with. And so how do you kind of figure out yourself what you need there? Like how do you determine those two things for yourself?
Yeah, so you need to immediately take a practice test and do a few
An
sets.
official practice test.
Yeah, an official practice test and just do some sets untimed. But here's the thing, like the progress that you're gonna have is pretty steep in the beginning relative to later on. So for example, if you study for 5 days versus 6 days, that difference is much more than 74 days versus 75 days. So
Sure.
what I want to say is you need to take a practice test like now. Okay? Like if you're
Right.
thinking you're going to take the test in a week because the other point is you do not know what you don't know. And you don't want to be surprised on test. You will be surprised on test day if you're studying only a week out regardless, but you don't want to be surprised even more than you need to be. So even before you ask yourself like what topics or what questions like am I having the most difficulty with, you need to like literally understand the instructions because the instructions for every question type will be the same on test day, and you don't want to be wasting brain power literally interpreting what a quant comparison question even is. Okay,
Yeah.
so
You
you
want to be focused on, okay, I know what type this is. I
Mhm.
know these rough tactics to solve it and doing that.
Yeah, and you don't want to be inventing those things on test day and literally reading the expl like trying to determine what a sentence equivalence question is and like, well, why does it want can I select two or select three or whatever? Why does it not let me? Like I don't want any student to be wasting time reading instructions while it's timed on test
Hmm.
day. So you have to do practice sets really quickly so you can get used to, and this is the first point, get used to just literally the structure of the exam of the question types. I mean,
Yeah.
second reason why we take a timed test though is to know on test day how fast we need to go. So this is also important. And a big reason why people get stuff wrong is just because they didn't go fast enough and they didn't know they had to go faster. They were unsure. They didn't know like what the correct pace was. So that's another reason why we take a practice test really early, quickly. If we know we have a test in 7 days, like that is probably the biggest thing you can do to help your scores to take a timed test. So you know how fast you need to be going on test day. But you did ask about like what should you be doing? Like what type of questions should you be doing? What is the word like when you play a video game and you're trying to get your XP up really fast? Or like when you're grinding to get XP?
Power leveling or something,
Power
or
level,
like
something like that. Yeah, yeah. You need to power level easy questions, specifically
of that type.
specifically of these three types. Quant comparison. You need
Okay.
to power level quant comparison easy questions because every section is going to start with like 4 quant comparison questions, and that question type is really common. And by preparing for it, you are basically preparing for more questions on test day than you are a random multiple choice question because you're not going to be using the same like you can like mental structure, like logical structure on those questions, but you are guaranteed to use it on test day for quant comparison questions. You're guaranteed to use the same sort of like logic is what I'm saying. So you need to power level quant comparison easy ones. The reason why I say easy is because like you need to get comfortable with it and because if you only have a week, we need to at least understand how to attack these questions and then there's a chance you'll get a harder one on test day. But if you do a bunch of hard ones now, like we're going to be doing far fewer questions in total, and we need to get the experience in early. And to be honest, on test day, your first section is going to be a medium difficulty question or section. There's going to be a lot of easy questions there, or like subjectively speaking.
Yeah, yeah.
And they're all worth the same in that section, so we need to get those. But
Well, and get them fast too.
yeah, and get them fast.
So then that gives you more time for the more difficult
Yeah,
ones.
that's a good point.
And that's actually something I got talking to a different person. He worked for ETS and helped them write questions at one point, so he understands how their stuff works a little bit. And like basically, if you get an easy question wrong, it counts for more negative points than if you get a medium difficulty question wrong,
Mm.
if that makes sense. So like if you, let's say, you got a medium difficulty question correct and a lower and an easy question wrong versus somebody else who got the easy question right and a medium difficulty question
Ah,
wrong, it would actually be worse to be the first
yeah, yeah.
person in terms of like your composite score at the end.
That makes
So it's important to be able to 100% those easy questions
that's
all the
such a good
time.
point.
It's like if you're, a fan of football, it's like if your team loses to the team that ends up being the worst team in the league that year,
Yeah,
it feels a lot worse
yeah.
than when they lost a close game.
Mhm,
So it's just like that actually does affect your score in this.
mm,
So yeah, just anyway, to your point, practicing with a bunch of easy questions, and then I'm guessing you slowly want to ramp your way up is a great way to kind
yeah.
of train yourself on these question types.
And I will just to be very clear, when you're talking about easy versus medium, you're talking about within the sections or like if you get an easy section in the second half, that is categorized differently than medium questions in the first half. I think they only categorize at this point. It might change in 2026 based on section. Yeah. But anyway, I want to talk a little bit about like practically speaking. Well, first, I want to say one more thing. The other thing you should power level is text completion and sentence equivalence questions for verbal. So those are the two things. For quant, do a bunch of quant comparison. For verbal, a bunch of text completion and sentence equivalence. And again, make them easy or medium difficulty. Reading comprehension takes a lot of time when you're practicing, and I would say you should only, if you have 1 week, you can do a few, but you should be spending a lot of your time with text completion and sentence equivalence, because within a section all of these things are worth the same, and you could actually prepare and improve on text completion and sentence equivalence quickly, but not so much on reading comprehension. That's probably actually the most difficult thing to improve on, is reading comprehension, because it just requires so much of like, or it's a lot about like how much you read in your lifetime, and how much of a reader are you. You can certainly improve and
Yeah,
get used to it, but the point is, like, if you have 1 week, you can improve on text completion and sentence equivalence much faster.
yeah,
Practically speaking, when you're studying vocabulary for 1 or 2 weeks, you want to study the highest frequency words. So in our Achievable course, we have the 250 most used words. These are going to be way more frequent than the next 750. I'll say, or probably about equal,
right.
but per word, they're way more frequent. So it's very important to, especially if you have a very short amount of time, learn those first couple hundred words, okay? Or just the first 100 if you really are have a not that much.
Yeah. Yeah, and also it's at the end of the day, we're talking about a battle plan for like 1 week.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
just have got to focus on the highest,
Mhm.
what's called the highest yield activities, the
Mhm.
things that are going to get you the most return.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about here. I'm not really if you have just 1 week and you're going to war, then this is your battle plan. In terms of those quant comparison and text completion and sentence equivalence questions that I was talking about, like if you're on the Achievable course, one way you can do that is to just, if you see a question and it says hard on the top, those are like our hardest questions, and it says hard because of them, like a lot of the people in the course get them wrong. You can just skip those if you're trying to do a lot of questions quickly. And if you really feel like you need to be working through the easy ones first, then just skip those. And that's kind of a good little
Right.
thing on the Achievable course that lets you know if you're doing a hard one or not as well.
Well, and I think that's good advice in general. I mean, it's basically, put another way, you should know where you're at, and if you are trying to, like, I don't know, let's pick any sport that you played. If you're in junior varsity and you want to get better, if you start playing with varsity players, like you're probably just going to get your butt kicked and you're not going
Yeah.
to really have the opportunity to learn that much. Versus if you are playing within JV, right? Like you might sit on the bench the whole season and then did you really learn, right? I think that there is a time and place for, trying to kind of level, like skill up and
Mhm.
take on harder stuff, especially if you're already acing all the easy and medium
Yeah.
questions. But if you're not acing the easy and medium questions, you've got to get to that point before you
Yeah.
move on to the harder stuff, because the harder stuff takes a lot more time to get
Yes,
good at.
exactly.
And it's like a scale that goes like this, where it's just like
Mhm.
harder and harder to get those smaller point improvements.
Yeah, and if you are having trouble with easy ones or medium ones too, it's likely that you're going to get an easier medium second set. You're not even going to see hard questions or what's considered like the hardest questions. So you
Yeah.
literally won't even see it.
Well, and the hardest questions get kind of weird, right? And
Mhm.
remembering how to solve all that weirdness doesn't really help you
Mhm.
when you're just trying to get the base
The basic.
functionality down.
Yeah. I wanted to say one more thing too about, a lot of test takers at some point they did math in their life, and they may have learned at one point the Pythagorean theorem, or, any random equation. If you did learn it before, I would certainly review, because at that point you're not learning something for the first time. So the work, if this is all about like work versus return, the work is much less for something you've learned at some point that you just need to review. So I would certainly look up. Actually, we're going to have this in our GRE course soon, just a PDF with a list of equations. So just look at that list, and then
Hmm.
from there you can see like what do I already know? Like what do I need to refresh on? Because it's nice to refresh on something you know for a fact is going to be useful, and that sheet is gonna help, obviously.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that, cheat sheets and things like that, like, making your own. I mean, Achievable, we provide some for you and they're free, so anybody listening to
Yeah,
this can go use them. They're if you go to our GRE course page on achievable.me, they're under resources. But also,
there's lots of stuff there, more
you
than
should make your own.
yeah.
Yeah, you should make your own too because that helps you memorize them. Like at a certain point, the way that you want to kind of be structuring yourself is you want to basically be able to number one diagnose questions and be like this is a sentence equivalence question, and then number two know how to solve that question at sort of a high level, like a couple bullet points of steps. And if you can get to that point, you're going to be able to get a pretty good score
Hmm.
and be able to do it in the time limit basically.
Let's just say last thing is don't procrastinate, and now is the time. The reason why you might be 1 week out and not started is because you procrastinated. Back to what I said earlier, 5 days studying versus six is a lot worse than the difference between 74 and 75. So start as soon as possible. And if you can,
Yeah.
push the test date back.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's, we realistically recommend 8 to 12 weeks. I
Hmm.
think that feels like a good amount for a lot of people. And then the other thing too is like, I mean, number one, your brain can only absorb so much information and retain it
Yeah,
in a given day.
yeah.
And then number two is that really the number one predictor of success is doing the work. And if you have more time, you can do more work, right?
Hmm.
Instead of doing 20 hours in 1 week, if you had 4 weeks and you did 10 hours a week, that's 40 hours, right? That is twice as much time spent practicing the skill. And so that makes a really big difference at a certain point. Obviously, though, if you just have a week, then I think this is a good battle plan.
I'll even say though, let's say you studied 40 hours, 1 hour a day. That to me is better than studying 5 hours a day for 8 hours, even though it's the same total
Yeah.
course. And the reason is you have more sleep cycles in between, and I mean, that in itself like helps with memory much better than just learning everything in a single day because you don't actually learn it all
Yeah.
much.
Yeah. I mean, that's the spaced
Yeah.
repetition sort of MO that, Achievable is founded on, right? But it's this idea that, you know, spaced learning is significantly more effective than cramming,
Yes.
like something to the order of like at least 50% more effective.
Hmm.
And so, you know, if you can afford to either, like you said, start earlier or move your test date back, it's definitely recommended. And in the meantime, this sort of structure and approach I think will be really helpful for anybody looking to master these tests.
Yeah.
Well, great. This has been GRE Snacks, hosted by Tyler from Achievable with Matt Roy. And Achievable has a great online GRE course that you can try for free by going to achievable.me.